HOA Karen's laugh was a hyena's cackle, slicing through the damp air as she waved her permits like a victory flag. "This land's mine now, cowboy, deal with it," she sneered, her triple chin wobbling with smug satisfaction. The rancher, Tom Hartley, stood rooted to his own soil, his family's legacy for 3 generations, now scarred with bulldozer tracks and half-built mansions. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the new HOA, had swooped in with her developer cronies, exploiting a loophole to seize Tom's 200-acre ranch for her gated community dream. Her vision? 110 cookie-cutter mansions, each a monument to her ego, sprawled across what was once rolling pastures. Tom's fists clenched, his weathered hands trembling not from fear, but from a rage that burned hotter than the August sun. He'd fought her for months, court hearings, petitions, sleepless nights only to watch her waddle onto his land with a smirk, claiming eminent domain, like it was her birthright. The locals called her HOA Karen for a reason. She ruled the neighborhood association with an iron fist, fining kids for lemonade stands and bullying widows over untrimmed hedges. Her gated community, Karen's paradise, was her crowning glory, so she thought. The conflict had started a year ago when Karen, fresh from some corporate real estate gig, moved to the sleepy town of Willow Creek. She'd spotted Tom's ranch, a sprawling haven of wildflowers and grazing cattle, and decided it was underutilized. With her connections at City Hall and a knack for bending rules, she pushed through a shady rezoning deal. Tom, a quiet man who preferred his horses to people, didn't stand a chance against her legal maneuvering. By spring, her bulldozers were tearing up his fields, and her billboards promised luxury living where his family once thrived. Today, though, was different. Tom stood on the edge of his former property, staring at the muddy chaos of Karen's half-finished subdivision. Rain clouds loomed, heavy and ominous, mirroring the storm in his chest. Karen, in her neon-pink blazer, was barking orders at 2 construction workers, who shifted uncomfortably, their boots sinking into the muck. "Hurry up," she snapped. "These mansions need to be move-in ready by fall, or I'll have your jobs." The workers exchanged glances, their faces tight with resentment. They'd heard the rumors Karen's permits were shaky, her funding was borrowed, and her promises were as hollow as the half-built homes. Tom stepped forward, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through her tirade. "You think you've won, Karen? You think you can just steal my land and build your little empire?" His eyes, usually soft, were steel now. Karen spun around, her jowls quivering. "Oh, Tom, don't be so dramatic," she mocked, waving a manicured hand. "This is progress. Your cows were an eyesore. Besides, the city approved everything. It's legal. Move on." Legal. The word stung like a slap. Tom had spent his life playing by the rules, paying taxes on the ranch his grandfather built, raising his daughter Ellie there after her mother passed. Now, this outsider, this loud, entitled woman had twisted legal into a weapon. But Tom wasn't done. He'd found something Karen hadn't counted on, a forgotten clause in the county's water management laws, tied to the creek that ran through his land. The same creek her mansions now sat on. "You didn't read the fine print, did you?" Tom said, his voice steady but laced with a dangerous edge. Karen's smirk faltered, just for a second. "What are you blabbering about?" she snapped, but her eyes darted nervously. Tom pulled out a folded document from his jacket, its edges worn from weeks of study. "This ranch sits on a floodplain. That creek you paved over, it's protected. I've got the right to restore its natural flow. Legally." The workers froze, sensing the shift. Karen's face reddened, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "You're bluffing. You can't touch my development. I've got permits, lawyers, everything." She stepped closer, her bulk looming over Tom, but he didn't flinch. "Permits don't change geography," he said. "You built on a flood zone, and I'm opening the creek tonight." The air crackled with tension. The workers backed away, muttering about unpaid overtime and Karen's impossible demands. One of them, a young man named Miguel, had grown up in Willow Creek. He knew Tom, knew the ranch's history. "She didn't even get a proper survey," he whispered to his coworker, shaking his head. "This whole place is gonna wash away." Karen's bravado crumbled as the first raindrops fell, fat and heavy, splattering her designer shoes. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, but her voice wavered. Tom met her gaze, unflinching. "Watch me." That night, under a torrential downpour, Tom did what he'd promised. With a small crew of loyal neighbors, he diverted the creek's blocked flow, using shovels and a borrowed backhoe. The water, pinned up for months behind Karen's shoddy retaining walls, roared back to life. It surged through the subdivision, a muddy torrent that swallowed foundations, toppled construction scaffolding, and turned Karen's paradise into a swamp. By morning, the mansions were sinking, their pristine facades caked in sludge. Karen arrived at dawn, her SUV skidding to a stop. She stumbled out, her face a mask of horror as she surveyed the wreckage. "No, no, this can't be happening," she wailed, sinking to her knees in the mud, her blazer ruined. The workers, now joined by curious townsfolk, watched from a distance. No one helped her up. Tom stood on a hill overlooking the chaos, Ellie at his side. His daughter, only 16 but wise beyond her years, squeezed his hand. "You did what was right, Dad," she said softly. "She took our home. You took hers." Tom nodded, but there was no triumph in his eyes, just a quiet resolve. He hadn't wanted destruction, he'd wanted justice. The fallout was swift. Karen's investors pulled out, her permits were revoked, and the city launched an investigation into her shady deals. The townsfolk, long fed up with her tyranny, rallied behind Tom. They started a fund to help him reclaim his land, vowing to restore the ranch to its former glory. Karen, humiliated and bankrupt, slunk out of Willow Creek, her dreams of paradise drowned in the flood she'd ignored. As the sun broke through the clouds, Tom walked the ranch with Ellie, the creek now flowing freely again. The land was scarred, but it was his. "We'll rebuild," he said, his voice steady. "Not for profit. For us." Ellie smiled, her eyes bright with hope. The ranch would heal, just as they would. Karen's reign was over, her arrogance washed away by the very land she'd underestimated. Willow Creek would remember her not as a visionary, but as a cautionary tale, a woman who built her empire on greed and paid the price in mud. The end.